My friends, the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. That very day, the first day of the week, two of Jesus' disciples were going to a village 7 miles from Jerusalem called Emmaus, and they were conversing about all the things that had occurred. And it happened that while they were conversing and debating, Jesus himself drew near and walked with them, but their eyes were prevented from recognizing them. He asked them, "What are you discussing as you walk along?" They stopped, looking downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, said to him in reply, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know of the things that have taken place there in these days?" And he replied to them, "What sort of things?" They said to him, "The things that happened to Jesus the Nazarene, who was a prophet mighty in word and deed before God and all the people. How our chief priests and rulers both handed him over to a sentence of death and crucified him. But we were hoping that he would be the one to redeem Israel. And besides all this, it is now the third day since this took place. Some women from our group, however, have astounded us. They were at the tomb early in the morning and did not find his body. They came back and reported that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who announced that he was alive. Then some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found things just as the women had described, but him they did not see." And he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are! How slow of heart to believe all that the prophets spoke! Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them what referred to him in all the scriptures. As they approached the village to which they were going, he gave the impression that he was going on further, but they urged him, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening, and the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. And it happened that while he was with them at table, he took bread, said the blessing, broke it, and gave it to them. With that, their eyes were opened and they recognized him, but he vanished from their sight. Then they said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he spoke to us on the way and opened the scriptures to us?" So they set out at once and returned to Jerusalem, where they found gathered together the 11, and those with them who were saying, "The Lord has truly been raised and has appeared to Simon." Then the two recounted what had taken place on the way and how he was made known to them in the breaking of the bread. The Gospel of the Lord. So I must admit, when I was younger, I was always a tad confused by this gospel, because I was always left with the somewhat obvious question: how did you not notice that Jesus was with you, walking beside you, after literally spending 3 years with this man? How do you not see him, even after just a few days? And I would convince myself that I would never be like those disciples, that I would never miss Jesus when he was so obviously right there, right in front of my face. And yet, today, a slightly older, more humble Zumbrum has a lot more sympathy and understanding for those two disciples. For the journey they were on was a journey marked by fear and grief and anxiety. And having been on my share of those journeys over the last few years, I can appreciate how grief does strange things to your heart, how it narrows your vision and constricts your perspective, how it weighs you down so that your eyes are only focused on your feet as you struggle to place one in front of another, day in and day out. When you're on that journey of grief, it's amazing what you miss. particularly the presence of God still active in your life, the face of Christ still present beside you on the journey. Maybe it's providential that this is the gospel reading during this time in which we all find ourselves grieving something, fearing something, anxious over something. It could be the smallest of things, the gray hairs that have multiplied since our last hair appointment, or the date night without children that we have not been able to have, or the simple pleasure of being able to visit a friend and share a cup of coffee in their living room that we just aren't able to do. Or it could be the crushing weights that are suddenly slung across our shoulders, the job that got furloughed, the senior whose spring season never got to happen, the loved one who dies without family around them, the diagnosis that comes back positive. But amidst all this grief, all this fear, and all this anxiety, it is easy to miss our God along the way. It is easy to miss the face of Christ, even when Christ is right beside us. I realized this over the past week. I don't know, maybe it was the gloomy weather, maybe it was the fact that schools were formally closed for the rest of the year, or maybe it was the fact that I just couldn't take another Zoom meeting. But I was a bit down. But then I had an impromptu meeting of about 10 juniors one afternoon. No agenda, no objective, just an opportunity to be with each other. And in that short 45 minutes, with all the laughs and the storytelling and the gentle mocking of one another that is the lifeblood of any all-boys school, I suddenly saw Christ so clearly. Christ in the faces of each of those young men. And in that light bulb moment, I suddenly realized that I had been missing Christ all around me. Christ in the faces of my colleagues as we gather together each week to figure out how to get through another one. In my oblate brothers as we gather for dinner, swapping stories of our past as we live in our present and plan for the future. In the grocery store clerk in Acme who somehow found another 100 stamps for me despite the line of customers and the constant stress he's under. In the voices of grads and friends and family as we chat on the phone, lifting one another up as we continue on this roller coaster. See, my friends, I believe that this is the true gift of Easter, the gift of Christ's abiding presence among us, no matter where on the journey we find ourselves. May we each have the ability this week to lift up our own eyes and see the God who is right there beside us, promising to walk right next to us into whatever horizons await us all. May God be praised.